Welcome to this episode of Let's Share series by I Love Children. And today we're going to be covering on 5 things that couples should talk about before they get married. So very interesting topic. And to just lead the way, my name is Claire and with me is my husband Boaz.
Hello.
Today, we're going to be covering an interview with a happy-go-lucky couple who's going to reveal to us what those top 5 things that couples should really talk about before they get married. Just a little spoiler alert, there's a bit of a stalker element with this interview, so stay tuned.
Hi everybody, my name's Ivan.
And I'm Terry.
And we've been married since 2016. And we have a child. Our child is reaching 1.5 years old. Okay, so let's start off with some questions that we have here. How did you know that he or she was the one? How did you know?
Actually, for me, when you meet so many people in life, and then when I met Ivan, I could totally imagine that I could be with her for forever.
Same it.
What do you think are some of the things that should be addressed before we consider marriage?
Well, certainly you got to really know the person. Okay, I think that's straight off the bat. It's easier said than done. We think we may know someone, but really to know somebody it takes time. And it does take, I would say, a period of friendship, deep friendship, where you feel safe with the person, enough to share your every little day things, somebody who you feel really comfortable with.
How do you meet her or him? Okay, we met. He was a fan. My short answer. He was a fan. He came and watched me when we were both students in NAFA.
Just to clarify, it's not really a stalker, more of a fan.
Fan, yes, fan. I would say that. I just had to say that just to make sure you stay tuned to watching this interview.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that knowing that she's the right one for him because he couldn't imagine himself living his life without her. Would that be something that's a good indicator as far as being a marriage partner is concerned?
Definitely. I do agree that if you feel that this is somebody whom you cannot live without, it's a good thing. But at the same time, on the flip side, if you cannot live without the person because of some unhealthy attachment, then that would be a different scenario altogether. So the key question is asking yourself, is this person whom you feel you cannot live without someone whom you feel can make you a better person, is somebody who inspires you and motivates you, and somebody that you feel truly emotionally safe with.
And so what we say to couples is love is blind, but after marriage, before marriage, eyes wide open. So if there are things that are nagging you, especially if you have what I call the if only questions. If only she wasn't like this. If only he wasn't like that. If you have a lot of if onlys, then you need to really think about it and ask yourself, am I prepared to live with those if onlys? Even in our relationship when we met, Claire had to struggle with that if only as well. In her mind, the thought that was running through her head was, if only Boaz wasn't so handsome. And it was something that she had to struggle with, and eventually she managed to overcome that.
Which leads me to the next point, is that you do need to ask yourself if your expectations of your partner are reasonable. A lot of times we have a certain idea of how our romance is going to go, or how we fall in love, and all this the day before you actually meet the person who you think you cannot live without, right? And so unfortunately, we are all having our own little movies playing in our head, and when we actually meet our partner, the movie doesn't turn out the way that we think it's going to turn out. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, are my expectations realistic? I'm marrying you because I truly love you for who you are, warts and all, and I'm happy and I can deeply accept you for who you are, and that's the person I feel I cannot live without. Okay, so let's hear from Terry and Bud on what they have to say about the 5 things you really need to talk about before you get married.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Did you discuss the following topics before getting married? Housing. Yes, we did talk about housing. We just talked about housing when we were. How long were we together? Less than a month. And the crazy thing was, we BTO when we were together for a few weeks.
Just a few weeks.
Yeah, I know.
Not a very
crazy.
smart choice, but at that time, because I think, because of friends or age group friends,
We hear a lot of unsuccessful stories, so we just try it out,
yeah, it was less than $20.
Yeah. You still remember? I don't
It's
remember.
around there, so it's like, okay, we try, see what happens.
Yeah. Then we got it.
Of course.
We got it. When we were together for less than a year, we got the answer that we were queue number 14.
Yeah, and her mom was really mad at us.
I was also very shocked because I realized that, oh my god, I need to marry this guy now.
Okay, so Singapore proposal. Get a BTO first or apply for a flat first and then propose marriage after the flat arrives. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess they have taken into consideration the length of time it takes to wait for the BTO, and they were confident enough, pretty sure that they really wanted to be together long enough, and they probably thought that, that 1.5 years or so. In fact, I think they were not thinking that they were going to get it in 1 year, and that is something when sometimes life throws us a curveball, right? And then what do? So when it comes to housing, I would say that be prepared. If your queue number gets pushed up forward, or look at the other options that you might have for housing as well, whether it's possible even to stay with your in-laws for a while, things like that, or how much you have time in terms of your lead up to buying a house and putting down the down payment, things like that. There are many factors that are involved, and it's interesting because for this couple, they have actually kind of like gone ahead first. They are really quite an outlier couple, very interesting couple, and very confident and very sure of who they want to marry. They are very lucky in that sense to be able to find their soulmate this early or that quickly. It may not be the case for most of us, where we do need the time to kind of plot along in the relationship. And so I would not advise buying a BTO immediately, even though you could be officially dating and you could have changed your Facebook status to in a relationship. Okay, but that does not mean that you should jump into getting a BTO just yet. If you do, then you have to be prepared for the financial cost that comes in. Don't just think about the $20 application fee you have to pay.
Yeah, so it's a good conversation to have, but I think it follows from what we talked about earlier. You have to be pretty confident that this is the person you want to marry.
Probably another factor we did not cover is the issue of in-laws. Right? So in-laws and family support, whether they like you as a person, these are very important things. You might think to yourself, oh, why is that important? After all, we are in love. Who cares about what other people think? We love each other, the feelings are mutual. Unfortunately, getting married is not just about the two of you. It's about starting a family. It's about the joining of two families. It is important to know whether your potential in-laws accept you and whether they like you. Because one of the housing options you might encounter would be having to stay with your in-laws for a period of time before you get a flat, before you get a property or wherever you intend to go to. And that can be really tough to live with if there was already an initial negative impression about you, and then you become the intruder into the family life. And so that's something that should be a consideration. And not something that you should assume. Perhaps you even need to talk to both sides of parents about your housing decision. That would be a very wise move to do so that everybody is on the same page, and it will help you in terms of making your housing decisions.
Wedding and honeymoon.
Yeah, of course we discussed about wedding and honeymoon. Like the main concerns for planning a wedding for us was definitely we want to spend too much on the wedding, and we still want the wedding to be as personalized as much as we can be now.
That's a sensible.
Then
Yeah, very good approach, I would say.
we did not take up any loans for the wedding because we don't believe in starting a marriage with, in debt.
Very important.
We had a lot of our friends who helped us in our wedding. A lot of them were our vendors. I think it was a good time for us to also support our friends' business. And then for honeymoon, where did we go for honeymoon?
Yeah, I went to Indonesia to climb
Bali.
Yes.
We climbed Mount Agung.
Sounds like a tough honeymoon.
Throughout the whole time, it was a 14 hours climb
14
up and down.
hours.
Yeah, 7 hours up, 7 hours down.
Is that really a honeymoon?
Very. I think you have a permanent scar on your butt because he fell on a rock, on like a sharp rock.
These are memories.
Yes, it was a very crazy thing because I really wanted to climb a mountain, but then when we started climbing, Henry said, "Why did we sign up for this? Where is the sunny It's very torturous.
Yeah, it's right after our wedding.
Yeah, I can't believe we did that, but it was very fun because it was it's my first mountain, right?
Yeah, that's
And that is not it's not an amateur mountain, okay? It's people who are experts climb this mountain. Okay. Did we break the bank for our honeymoon? No, we didn't break the bank, right? But we broke our bodies.
You broke the bodies for sure.
Because we also went whitewater rafting after climbing Mount Agung.
You can survive that.
So
you can survive
that was our
Yeah,
Bali
maybe
trip,
that's
our
what we were
honeymoon.
going
It
for.
was unforgettable, huh? It's something that we'll never forget because of all the pain. Right? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I like there's some keywords that are there which I think captures what we're looking at as far as planning for the marriage, the wedding, and the honeymoon. I think Ivan used words like memorable, unforgettable, lots of fun, and I think that's really what you're looking at. It doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, that's what they said, right? The honeymoon wasn't expensive. The wedding was more personal, and they look for things to outsource rather than just spending money outside of their means. And I think that if we think about things that are really important, which are really about the memories, right?
Memories, as well as the fact that I really like the fact that she said that they did not want to be in debt.
Yes.
Okay, that is a big ringer for me because you certainly do not want to start off your marriage in debt because of a big fancy wedding that you have. And in this respect, it'd be good to kind of remember to keep your expectations reasonable and understand that life is about limitations and working within our limitations. And that is really what brings peace, okay, into the marriage.
Finances. How do we decide on the household bills?
Well, so when we first moved into the house, of course there are so many things to settle, like our furnitures, and we have our televisions, electrical bills, and just a lot of things going on. But I think how we kind of handle it is that we first need to settle our the daily bills first, right? And after that, we need to work out a plan. Like, okay, we cannot have credit card bills because knowing that credit card bills means we incur interest and stuff like that. So that was our priority. Like, we need to get rid of that one first. So that took us almost 1.5 years or so because
To finish the payments.
because I was back then still struggling to find a job, and
It does take a lot of cooperation.
when finally I got a full-time job, I had to adjust to settle the bills bit by bit. It wasn't something that we could handle all in one shot. So in terms of household bill, I'm always the one that kind of struggle at the end because financially I'm not the one who earn the most. So naturally I have to kind of break down and slow things down sometimes, even okay, we can't spend too much this month, or we can't spend too much.
Oh, but I wanted to spend. I wanted to spend on the sofa, I wanted to spend on TV, and fridge because I find that very important. He don't find it important to have a couch. He thinks that we can go without a fridge for a year.
No.
You have to go hunting every day.
Months.
Few months.
That's like for us. Okay, my priority is okay. You go to a house, you need to first have bed, right?
Bed was one of the first thing we bought.
Right, and you want a comfortable
I think
bed,
the
so
fridge was also the
that was
first thing we bought.
that's kind of cost us a bit of money. Fridge.
Yep.
And the next thing you must
Yes.
have is aircon.
It's
The
very
house was
important.
last.
Yes, very important.
Yeah, then after that, like okay, we can make do with no TV. That's fine, right? So we can use our phone and stuff like
You
that.
can live without TV,
But
the
again,
time
like,
is internet and
When
video streaming.
when you first move in, you are very excited.
I think in our time, TV was very important.
It's very tempting. You say, oh, we need this, we need a fridge, we need this. It's a lot to take in, especially when you just move in. So I have to be the one that says, slow down, slow down. For those very big purchases, a fridge
Yeah.
and stuff like that, which I feel like I can afford not to have it today or this month. But if you need it, you go ahead first. Catch up.
It's very important that couples understand the principle of delayed
yes.
gratification.
Catch up.
That they are able to postpone, what they want to do for later.
And finances, I think this is one of the areas where couples have a lot of disagreements about, or potentially a minefield. And it's nice to see how Ivan and Terry were sort of navigating it through. And I think the fact that they were working together really made a big difference. And starting off without
Yes.
a huge debt is actually so important. Right?
And even with Terry shared about how he was also not yet employed, and yet they managed to keep to their financial goals. I think that's really quite amazing that they managed to make all their payments. It does take some sacrifice, as what Yvonne mentioned, that she wanted a lot of things. We have a lot of wants, but question is, are those wants needs, right? And of course, the question about whether the fridge is a need or want, I would definitely wholeheartedly say that the fridge is a need. It's not a want.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. So I would say that in terms of dealing with finances, I like the way that Terry and Yvonne were able to talk about it calmly and without getting upset or feeling like, why is it that your needs are met and my needs are not met? Why is it that you can spend on this item and I can't? I have to wait for my item maybe 1 year down the road, or why do I have to save up for later? In fact, there was a very nice give and take. Terry said, it's okay, I can let go of what I want now, I can always save it for later. I'm able to see that, what Yvonne wanted was something which is a need, right? The fridge or, things like that. And so these are things which I would say a couple need to exercise reasonableness. Okay, you need to exercise reason and be objective. It's all a question of not spending beyond your means.
And not being pressured into spending beyond what you can. And so the dialogue, I think, was very important. And that, I think, was very clear from what they mentioned is that Harry and Ivan were having that conversation.
Yes.
And they managed to come to an agreement as to how they would get the house done
That's
and
right.
the finances. And that's really amazing.
Yes, that's really good.
How about joint savings? We actually don't have a joint savings account because I think we just never thought of it.
Yeah.
But I would think that it's quite important to have a joint savings account because we will know exactly what money goes there and what is that joint savings account paying for. If both of us contribute the same amount of savings every month to the joint savings account, then that account can just pay for everything that has got to do in the house. So maybe that is a good idea.
Oh, they actually haven't started, so.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see that they're able to talk about it.
Yeah, so this thing again about how it's not a one size fits all. And it's really, I think the key component is finding what works for you. But we want to underscore the importance of having that conversation. And I think being transparent about it.
Having children. How many children do you intend to have? I will answer this first, then I'll see what his answer is. I intend to have 2 or 3, and I wouldn't mind a surprise 4, but I would be very scared and surprised at number 4.
You can see Harry's looking
How about
very
you?
surprised.
I think more comfortable having two.
Okay, cut.
Hey, no, not yet, not yet. Because I think, given our age right now, we are in our 30s,
Yes.
and our body recovery is not as fast as before. We get tired easily, get exhausted very fast. So for let's keep it,
Because my family is a big family. We have 5 children.
He wants to
So it's not easy. So maybe 2 or 3. Right, 2 or 3. He's always very surprised when I say 3. The number 3 scares him.
come from where?
Yeah, so again, I think it's good that they were talking about the number of children because we have also encountered couples where they've actually gone into marriage and not even talked about the number of children, and only to be surprised that one didn't want to have children, or not just having children itself, but sort of like roughly when.
We even know of couples who have agreed to just have pets instead of children as a way of getting around the issue. Yeah, we actually know one couple who decided to have pets and many years later decided to have children, and then the same couple now runs and tells me that they wish they had children earlier. And I think that's the moral of the story. We have to understand that our biological clock, especially for women, really is ticking, okay? And so in that respect, we can't really delay having children for too long. Okay, I'm not saying this as a line for I love children, but indeed, we do have to acknowledge that we don't get any younger, and in terms of fertility, that is also affected by our age, especially for women. And I would say that in terms of planning financially, yes, we do need to take into account. But we also have to manage our expectations as to what do we intend to use the money for our children. Are you planning for very expensive education? Actually, that's really not. We think that's what our children want, but that's actually not true. What we want is actually to have children who have a sense of being loved, who know that they're loved and appreciated, and they have a good sense of values as well, right? These are things which make people useful in society, where we're able to give back to society because of core values that we have imparted to our children. And that really is a heritage why we have children. Not so much that we have so much money that we can give them a trip to Disneyland. That is not truly what parenting is all about. So I'm glad to see that Ivan, and I hope you, like Ivan, would also want to have many children. It's a great thing. It's really tough because usually the men are the ones who want a lot of children, and women are saying, hello, I'm the one giving birth. Okay, so I should decide. So good for you, Ivan.
While we were dating, actually, we did not talk about having children. But then when we got married, on the wedding day, Terry said, I want baby. Exactly that tone. Then I was like, we need to talk about that first. On the wedding day, then we started talking about having children. So it was quite a scare because on the wedding day, he really wanted a child. Ever since our wedding day, every time he see a kid, a small child, then he'd be, I want one also. Then it was very stressful for me because I'm not ready. I wasn't ready. I said 2 years later, 2 years after our wedding, we can have a kid. How do we know? Okay, how do we know when was the right time to actually start having children? For us, we knew that we wanted kids. I think when we were both 30, we were both reaching 30 already, so we thought that it's about time, right, to have children.
Yes, I mean there's lots of
But for me, I was thinking like,
cross that
what
line.
will I be, or how old my son will be? I say that I am 30 years old. My son is 10 years old, looking backwards. And then if I am 25, how old will my son be? So mathematics.
I'm just picking up on what Ivan said about not being ready and being concerned about that. I think this is one of those conversations when you have with your spouse, is not to pressure them into having children, not to feel resentful in the discussion. It's good to talk about it before marriage, but then be able to navigate through the emotions because having children is a very a topic that people feel very strongly about, and it is one of those topics that can actually bring couples closer together if they manage the conversation well. I think it's to be able to say, identify what are the concerns and not pressure each other into either having or not having children, and then addressing this. And the wonderful thing is that there are so many places now that you can get information that will help you to make the decision. And I think that is, it's very different from maybe 1-2 generations ago where it was a lot harder to find information about this.
The number one top concern for having the first baby was money, because I knew that I might not have a job. I was very worried about having a baby, right? That was for me. I didn't even think about whether I could cook. It was more like whether can we survive? Will I have money to take care of this baby? And I didn't know a lot about childcare centers or preschools. All I know is very expensive. Living in Singapore is very, very expensive. Yeah. How about you? Your top concern is age.
Yeah, my top concern is age, because I'm worried that when my son is at a certain age, I couldn't keep up. Say, oh, Papa, I want to go play basketball. Can you play basketball with me? And I said, I don't know.
That's
old for it.
That's true.
I might not even have the energy to do it. It's like, as you keep up with the work,
As we get older, our metabolic rate
you start to
slows
feel
down.
very
That's
drained.
the fact of
and
life.
you
No
don't
matter how
have
much
that
you exercise,
energy.
eat your vitamins, aging is a very real.
Yeah, so he wanted to have a baby ASAP. Even though I wasn't ready, he wanted one.
Having said that, you can never be fully ready to have a child. But there are certain markers.
Agreed,
And I think
agreed.
that with the desire, then all the other things, there's so much assistance that are there and so much information that helps to fill the gap.
In fact, there are actually quite a lot of government grants as well for Singaporeans and PRs as well. So I would say that, you should do your math. Let's break it down. Look at the specifics of how much it actually costs. And just like, anything in life, if you want to buy an expensive item or jewelry, people would save up for it. So if having a child has some cost, then of course you should start planning and finding out the specifics and then work towards a time where you feel that I think I'm ready to put aside the time and the money, and this will be our baby fund.
And I think more often than not, we are unaware of just what a blessing the children are to us. We have a friend of ours who has 5 children, and if you were to ask them what would they think of if they had stopped at 2, for example, and they can't imagine not having all 5. It's amazing, and do they have stress? Yes, but the joy of the children is just something that we sometimes don't think about. We just look at the dollars and cents aspect of
Yes,
it.
absolutely. And I truly agree with what Terry says, that age is a factor.
Concern for trying number 2.
Oh, we are trying for number 2. Oh, we
You
haven't
said
really
3 and 4. You were ready for 4.
we haven't started trying for number 2 yet. But if I had a top concern, it would still be, I think it would be savings. Whether I have enough savings to sustain us. What's your concern?
My main concern is our mental health, right? Whether we can cope with having 2 babies at the same time, because we will lose our sleep. We don't have much time for ourselves. Pretty much, I think whatever concern we have for number 1 is times 2. Have you ever thought you would have a fertility issue since you had number 1 easy?
Definitely we didn't think about fertility issue before number 1, because my mom has 5 children, so I thought it's not going to be difficult for me. But now that we are a bit older, we are 30-ish years old, then definitely fertility issues will be a question, whether we can conceive. And also there was one point is that I'm still breastfeeding my child. He's 1.5 years old. So apparently, when I asked the doctor that will I be able to tell if I'm pregnant, then she said it's harder to tell because you are still breastfeeding and you don't have a period, so there's no indication. So she told me, but it is still possible to still get pregnant. So that's the thing, we won't know if we get pregnant, so this will be a surprise, I guess, if it does happen. Yeah. So if we tried for maybe 3 months and still nothing happens, I'll be worried. And if it's 6 months, then I think that will be the time where we will decide to try other options. Yeah.
So,
Again, no, he said retirement.
retirement cleansing goal.
We wanted to retire in Indonesia, so we'll both be very chill. That is our main retirement goal, to be chill. And just like
I like that.
Staring to space. Sounds very nice.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Actually, it's very nice.
Ice coffee.
I would like to stand to space.
How about like money in terms of retirement?
It really depends on whether when we are at the age of maybe 60 years old, whether are we still healthy. I think that was my main concern.
Oh.
Instead of thinking of money, I think of health.
No, because like when you have retirement, when you're retired, you must have enough money to sustain you.
Of course.
You didn't think of that?
Indeed.
That's why I say we have a lump sum, then we move to Indonesia, so we can chill. You don't have to work because you have money.
That's kind of fun.
Oh my god! You think of what?
Health, right?
You think of health.
It's more important.
You think about money also.
To find
If we are retired, we would probably get passive income from renting out our flat. That's one of the things we talk about now.
Yeah, as well as having insurance also.
Insurance,
Yeah,
yeah.
insurance coverage.
Because when we reach that age, the payout will be very good. Is it? Okay, not
You're thinking about that, I'm thinking about health again because if you are going to hospital, you have to pay so much money, and you must have
It's
insurance.
interesting that they both have
your medical bill.
different
I didn't think about money.
goals when it comes to financial
about
goals
health.
for retirement. Right? And she's thinking about having enough disposable income, but he is thinking about potential hospital bills. Both are equally fair points. And I think this is something which is true. In fact, I would say both parts. When you consider retirement, you have to remember that you're not going to be a young chicken when you are in your 80s or 70s or 60s, right? You're going to have a measure of health, hopefully, right? But we have to also understand that there are more needs, more maintenance, just like an old car, we need to maintain. But this is something which I would say, yes, you should consider it now. Insurance plans are also cheaper when you're younger, you buy it now. You can't buy it when you're 50s, it's exorbitant.
And I would say that this is one topic that not many couples talk before marriage, because the immediate concern is the wedding and maybe the house and some aspects of the finances. But if you're looking in terms of finances as well, then planning for your retirement, as Claire mentioned, because some of the things you need to do now in order for you to reap the benefits of it in later years.
Now that we've heard the couple about the 5 things that we need to talk about before marriage, now let's hear from them about living together.
Did you experience any surprises after tying the knot and moving in together? Any habits that you want to talk about?
Okay, this is a long field. It's habits after marriage they come to life.
Wow, I can write a novel.
Nothing weird.
Oh,
Okay.
weird.
That's good. I think
Just
it's
like go home.
You know why? Because we were living with each other's, we stayed over at each other's place before we got married. So I think I kind of know what his habits are. He already know mine. So nothing scared us when we moved in together. Couple conflicts are inevitable. How do you resolve conflict? You want to answer that?
Wow, that's really hard. Because both of us, when we handle conflict, is so different. like I will run away. Yeah, because I don't like to be confronted. I don't like to be challenged.
I confront you and I challenge you.
Yeah, like you are
So
very
it's a not
constructive. You're very good at your
confrontational kind
words.
of person.
You
Very much like you
talk
too.
about argument. You are very good at.
I
you know,
would say it's very
taking
much
a point.
like men.
And for me, I just want to end the whole argument quick.
Generally, I feel that both of us, we don't quarrel very, very often. I've come to a point where if it's worth looking past, just look past it. Because, you know, to always quarrel with your partner is very, very, very tiring. So, I'd rather just look past it. And unless it is something that I really, really cannot take, you know, it really irks me. So I will then talk to him. I will have to talk about it. But generally, I feel both of us don't really like to quarrel.
Yeah,
We don't like to have a conflict. So a lot of things, when I say look past, right, it could also mean bottle up. At the end of the day, right, when we do talk about it, it can be a very big argument. You know, it's those kind of things where you sweep things under the carpet and then you open the bottle of worms, a can of worms, that kind of thing.
Sweeping things under the carpet is a big issue. I would say a very common issue as well.
Yeah, so this really is one of those important areas, talking about expectations, dealing with expectations so there are no surprises, but also learning how to talk about issues.
And men, I would say, tend to have a tendency to withdraw from conflict. Women, actually, contrary to what people might say, are not constantly pursuing the conflict for the sake of pursuing conflict, for the sake of having conflict. But it's more the case of the need not to have things suppressed. That's more the issue, and hoping to have full closure on the matter. So it's the way men and women are wired differently. Yvonne gave a very important clue when she says that when suddenly things explode out of nowhere because you've been bottling it, when you encounter such a situation, it only means that quite clearly is an issue you do need to talk about as a couple. Okay? If there are things which you've let go and does not bother you at all, then you know that it's not something you need to really bring up. But if it's something that causes you to blow up unexpectedly, then you do need to take some processing time before you can even engage the person and say, shall we have a talk? Because a lot of times we don't do the processing and then we ask for the talk and then we go into round two because of arguing because you did not actually process it the very first time.
And so this is one of those areas where Claire and I would really encourage you to learn. You know, there are many courses out there that teach you how to have a conversation on topics which are very sensitive and do it in a safe way. So that key word again is critical. How can we talk about this in a way that's safe so that there's no fear?
That kind of thing. So recently we had a big one, but then what he did was to list down everything that I complained about him. Oh my gosh, my list was so long.
Yeah, it was like one page A4 size.
And he remembered a lot of points that I don't even remember, which was very good because I was like, yeah, he's helping me organize my thoughts. So it was actually very good. And I said, why not? Sorry, this is me in my angry voice. Why not you list down the things you don't like about me? And he write. He took very long to write. He wrote 1 point, then he wrote 2 points. That was it. I'm quite bad. Do you think it's important to have a me or us time? And why? Definitely. Yeah. Actually, one of the main things we had when we have the recent conflict was we don't have enough time together. Because ever since we have a baby, for 1.5 years, we have gone out maybe 2 times only by ourselves. Most of the time when we are together, the baby is there, so it's like coupled with anxiety and stress. So that's not spending time together with him at all.
Yeah.
So
At the same time, I also find it really hard to not spend time with our child together, the three of us as us, because like I work Monday to Friday, I hardly see him, hardly spend time with him. So I wouldn't mind having the us time.
Yeah, so he really wants family time, whereas I want time alone or time with him because I spend most of my days with the baby. But I also have to understand that he wants time with the baby too. So now we have to compromise to actually put one day aside for us to spend time together. I think it's actually very important and it will really help our relationship.
So what I would say is that it's good to start the habits before you get married, right? So have that routine where you spend time with one another. And then after you get married, things get a little bit more complicated, and then as you go further in your marriage, you get a little bit more complicated, children, juggling responsibilities at work. If you have that discussion before marriage about how do we spend our time together, being very intentional, and then later on when you're married, it's just a question of layering it. When the children come, you just make that little bit of adjustment, but the key word here is being intentional. It's not something that just happens on its own.
I like the fact that Terry and Yvonne actually talk about things about that perspective and why they react the way they do, and what he was thinking when he comes through the door, and what she was thinking when he comes home, that she wants to have that alone time. And indeed, being a couple, you do need to have that alone time. So these are things which couples should talk about, and then work out an arrangement where the husband could take care of the kid while the wife goes ahead and have a couple of hours alone to herself.
So there's always a solution when you are able to talk about it in a calm way without getting into any disagreement.
Notice we keep using the word calm because actually we find that really is the key. Anger is not something we really should be sharing unless you have processed the anger.
Okay, so marriage is difficult, but it is the kind of things that you have to choose, right? Because not working on your marriage is also difficult. It's going to be hard. And I think, we've been married for 25 years now, and there have been many times when we had to navigate through difficult issues. I think it is useful to know that one of the things that has helped us through is actually having a healthy sense of humor. Not laughing at one another, but laughing together, and not being caught up with the little things that can add up over time. What I also appreciate now is just there's so much information available. When we got married, premarital classes were few and far between. There was not much information that you could get just at the fingertips, which is now there. And if there was one thing that I would say to you, if you're planning on getting married, is go get information. Go for the courses. It's so important to be trained. I think that some of the things that we wish we learned earlier on in our marriage as well, that would have helped us, in terms of navigating through some of the conflict as well.
Yeah, indeed, it's all about life skills, and the skill to love well is something that is been a mystery, is kind of like dodged people for centuries, right? We can see from the whole slew of people who have not made it, but then again, we've also got the glimmer of hope from successful stories, and that is where we have a marker. And in the program that we teach, prep course is actually based on evidence of successful couples, and that's something that I totally appreciate. And so this is something that we do over 12 hours. It goes to show you how much communication is involved and the kind of skills that we need. And that has been an eye-opener for me, and I'm still practicing it even today.
So I think there'll be a link in the video that will point you to some of the resources that you can look at. Remember, you are not in this alone. There's so much help out there, and really encourage you to seek this material out.
So that's all for now. So we wish you all the best in your marriage, and stay happy, stay calm. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.